Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the second-hand music channel, and as per usual, I'm a casual 30 years behind the musical curve, and it has taken me till just now to finally find and feel that possessed passion that bursts from Tori Amos when she comes together with her piano. This fiery, red-headed, prodigal preacher's daughter has a true gift of delivering these unique and ambiguous, soaring and storied melodies that reflect her personal experiences in a universal fashion. She's been fairly productive over those 30 years, releasing 16 LPs, and with 7 of them reaching at least a gold status, there's really no excuse for me not to have heard about her, besides the fact that I've been trying to learn about all this other stuff. Born Myra Ellen Amos in 1963, she grew up in a fairly strict Christian household in Baltimore, Maryland. Playing the piano from the moment she could reach it, she became the youngest ever to be accepted into the preparatory division of the Peabody Conservatory of Music at just age 5 years old. However, her disinterest in learning sheet music and playing those rigid classical stylings led her to losing that scholarship at age 11, and at 13 she managed to convince her dad that she wanted to perform live in venues, and they would convince a gay bar to allow her to play her first little performances. Throughout her teens, she would get together a little bit of a repertoire, put together some demos, and grab the attention of a producer, Narada Walden, who'd help her cut together some more cleaned up songs, and that would be what eventually got the attention of Atlantic Records. Discovering her new name when compared to a Tory Pine, she moved out to LA in '84, and in '87 would sign a 6-record deal with Atlantic. That label would unfortunately convince her that her piano thing just wasn't commercially viable, and she needed a rock band to support her, and that would lead to the short-lived glam rocky project called Why Can't Tori Read, whose first uninspired 1988 debut album flopped on release, and maybe that failure is what finally convinced the label to allow Tori to do that solo shot that she always wanted to do, and she got to work on that debut, Little Earthquakes, who through many different iterations, a bunch of producers finally got that label approval and got to be released in January of 1992. That diaristic, stripped-back singer-songwriter in her piano LP was a breakthrough that debuted at number 15 in the UK charts and sold nearly 2 million copies. It defied the commercially appropriate identity that she already shed and allowed her special, keys-driven rock sound to flourish for her 1994 double platinum follow-up, Under the Pink. It was the second and the last of Tori's albums to be co-produced by her soon-to-be ex-boyfriend Eric Rossi, whose breakup and subsequent reflection would lead to an inspired and transformative third solo album. This is Tori's 4th album with Atlantic Records, her first as sole producer, released at number 2 in both the UK and the US charts in January of 1996. This is Tori Amos's Boys for Pele. Pele is primarily referencing the Hawaiian volcano goddess, and that reference is one whose meaning shifted throughout the very making of this album, beginning primarily as just this act of sacrificing the men in her life to Pele, and then later those boys becoming the fuel for her fire that she reclaims as she goes through this grand emotional journey. The cover itself bears symbols of life and death. It has a reference to her very first single from her first album, Me and a Gun. It's this just gut-wrenching song that tells the tale about Amos's own experience getting raped. You flip it over and you can see there's a transition in demeanor. She's put down the gun and replaced it to embrace this symbol of uncleanly innocence in the form of a cute baby pig. Through the process of making this record, not only does Tori reclaim her inner flame from the men in her past, but steals back some of the passion that was suppressed by that Christian upbringing by recording the bulk of this project in a live church in Delgany, Ireland. It's not even this wholly rebellious act either. Moreover, the freedom to express herself and take these old styles and turn them into something new in this holy space. It's probably the most difficult and ambitious album she ever recorded, with her learning the clavichord, harpsichord, and harmonium, and just finding a way to take those ancient instruments and give them this just fascinating modern flair that is all her own. I won't say it's as immediately accessible as her previous or even following releases, but the emotional depth and the sheer grandeur that's conveyed by Amos's incredible vocal range are just completely inescapable once you allow for its soft hooks and open flowing nature to envelop your ear holes, starting you out in this well of despair, heartbreak, and anger, stopping in for tea with the devil, to chatting with prophets, and then leaving you in a place of compassionate forgiveness where you can feel a little whole again and ready to move forward with your life. Let us embark now on this multi-phased, spiritual, soul-searching excursion and use this track list as our trail map. We're all ready to hop onto our horses and begin riding to gather our first dozen blood roses once we've received our blessing from this album's very first opening interlude called Beauty Queen. Tori and her Bösendorfer piano roll in tentatively here, as if walking along a delicate tightrope or sitting atop a precarious tower. She's trying hopelessly to look past the obvious lack of support. These horses are that symbol of a last-ditch effort to try to escape the inevitable and oncoming fall that is bound to come in this unsustainable situation. Blood Roses then follows with an expression of harpsichordal rage. It sees Tori cutting away and washing herself of any endured abuse. I believe it tells a story. It's kind of obscure, symbolic, and tragic, a tale of a prostitute that gets murdered, but as is with most of Tori's music, her songs are kind of up to the interpretation of the listener. Confronting her inner darkness with a song that was inspired by an ayahuasca trip next, called Father Lucifer. It sees her casually skipping in, greeting the devil, letting him know that nothing's gonna stop her from floating. It's freeing herself from outside influences, reframing her perspectives, and then you get this pair of verses at the end that are layered on top of each other that are barely comprehensible and really at face value almost entirely meaningless, because some of the symbols and references that Tori likes to use are very specific, and it takes some serious digging to actually pick apart a lot of these songs, and so I just didn't have the time on this one. The whole project is tonally so pleasant, and her vocal fluidity and grace just washes over you in a way that doesn't really allow for a ton of processing time the first time you hear her music, but it's this quality that allows not only each individual to find different meaning in individual tracks, but it also allows for that person to experience the broad range of meaning that has been snuck in carefully as you go deeper and sit with a track for longer. I think Professional Widow is another excellent example of that, with the remix of it being the one that went #1, and actually the version that's included on some of the reissues. Even the original is probably my favorite, and this project's most groovy, controlling, and confrontational cut, with also some of its most delectable vocal hooks as well. Starfucker, just like my daddy. This one's allegedly about when she was in a relationship with Trent Reznor and she got cheated on with none other than Courtney Love. There's a few tracks here that have a reference to this little relationship, as well as that Eric Rossi one that kind of is the main all-encompassing heartbreak and rebirth, and she's just taking ownership and taking charge here. I just gotta quickly note that I love Tori's wordplay so much, like the way she pronounces congressman, congressman. It's just another one of those things that'll lead to multiple interpretations of some of her lines, and some of the lines that are just there for her or simply for the sake of a bubblier melody. We get to the second interlude that is this whimsical number called Mr. Zebra, and it tells more details about that professional widow story, I believe, and we move into this sadly true tale about undiagnosed mental health and superficial love that is called Mary Ann. It's about a beautiful girl that Tori used to know, and just the shock and disbelief that she experiences when Mary Ann takes her own life. It's gorgeously supported and given so much extra added gravity by the string section brought in by the Symphonia of London here. Now time for a Baroque pop epic. It's this album's inaugural single and the last track to reference the little Trent Reznor fling called Caught a Light Sneeze. It's such a beautiful song with its heavenly swelling chorus paired perfectly with Tori's high-pitched invocations of She's calling upon the Mesopotamian goddess of love, fertility, and warfare to maybe help her save this relationship with that light sneeze, or probably rather asking for the strength to be able to wipe it off into the past. Convening with Prophet Muhammad next on Muhammad My Friend, where she waxes on if baby Jesus had been born a woman, and just how in general the spirit and essence of womanhood has been stripped away and turned into this overly simplified symbol by religion. It has yet another inescapably cinematic chorus, and as well as this fairly standard song structure in comparison to most of these tracks, I think it's this great ear-catching, slightly controversial introduction that would be an excellent way to get into Tori's songs, and I feel like it's kind of a shame that they didn't release it as a single. Hey Jupiter is this record's broken-hearted turning point, where you have this complicated love triangle between her and this giant ancient love of Jupiter that is far off and unrequited at this point, and then there's a lot of shame with this other party, this new comfort that she gets, that she still has all this feelings for the great love that just isn't there for her anymore. It's a real somber and open planetary ballad that leads us to the third interlude called Way Down, where Tori is accompanied by this gospel choir in a hymnal-like fashion. They take her down to this record's shameful rock bottom. A lot goes into this one. There's a ton of great remixes of it as well. There's a lot of fingers here getting pointed at an overreaching patriarchal society. I find the deeper I start to read into these songs, I end up getting a little lost if I try to do it a little too quickly. It is giving me more of that appreciation for Tor's ability to craft these songs that have multiplicitous interpretations, and I guess my interpretation for this song is she's going through that breakup and Tallulah's there to help her to understand her value and kind of come to terms with her heartache. Not the Red Baron is this record's quiet moment of compassion for all men, where Tori subdues her fire and shifts her perspective to that of a war zone and experiences all the terrible loss and destruction. It's really touching, and it leads us into the last interlude, Agent Orange, where she's then sitting in this wreckage and starting to pick up the pieces again. The breakups just don't let up, with a pair of complexly metaphorical over 5-minute tunes called Donut Song and In the Springtime of His Voodoo. Donut being this bittersweet song about letting go and becoming your own source of power, and then Voodoo being a more playful but frustrated uncertainty about something that could have been. They're both these songs that are contemplative and about knowing what you need, that you start to appreciate more the more you dig into them. One last melancholic tale of falling out of love. It's putting the damage on, and in a similar sense to that from Hey Jupiter, you are still in love with someone that has moved on. It is this honest and a little bit petty but reluctantly gracious lesson in moving on, and there's these theatrical waves of brass that are brought in by the Dyke Mills band here that are so great. Finishing this chamber pop opus is Twinkle, a stripped back, intimate send-off that feels simultaneously imprisoned and free. Just another dichotomous sentiment that is expressed beautifully by Miss Amos on this truly ambiguous, endearing, and enlightening album. I've spent a lot of time listening to Tori in preparation for this video, and I am still continuously blown away by these songs. Her classical proficiencies merged and stylized with a unique and enthralling range of contemporary expression just collides in spectacular fashion with Boys for Pele. At 70 minutes and 18 tracks, which is really just 14 tracks and a number of interludes that break it into its 4 parts, this album pales in comparison to the deluxe edition that has 39 tracks. It contains many of the 35 songs that Tori wrote in preparation for this album, many of which saw release on EPs and B-sides of singles and other albums and live performances throughout the years, but they're all compiled on that behemoth re-release. It is a lot of Tori to handle, and that is the version that I've linked down in the description, along with a link to her channel where you can check out all her other albums, but feel free to just stop after track 18. When it gets to Twinkle, you can take a break if you need it, but I just love spending time with this album, and the more of it that I get, I think the better I am for it. If you do enjoy Tori and you want to go deeper, try out her fantastic change of pace on the following albums, from The Choir Girl Hotel and To Venus and Back. All of her Atlantic albums really are great. Even the covers album Strange Little Girls that she did of male artist songs that would be written about women that she swapped the perspective on. I think the albums she released through Epic Records are pretty good too, but kind of since 2009, I think Abnormally Attracted to Sin is one of my last real favorite Tori albums of the modern day, and up until her most recent Ocean to Ocean, I feel like she was lacking a bit of fire that she really had in abundance, and she really burst forth with Pele here. She's got a pair of books as well, and a comic book series, Comic Book Tattoo, that is inspired by or based off of songs written by her, and she's also composed songs for a musical called The Light Princess. Such a super talented and enduring light. Tori Amos's enigmatic essence is one that I will continue to cherish and revisit and further explore as I go on with my life, and I hope that she continues to perform for as long as she's compelled to. Let me know your thoughts on Pele or Tori in general down in the comments. Leave me a live track recommendation, or maybe your favorite concert experience you had seeing one of her thousands of shows that she's performed. Leave me a like for making it to the end of the video, and subscribe if you want more throwback music nostalgia, secondhand albums out my ears. There's a couple you can check out right here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Take the best care. Sweet, 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 you used to be so sweet to me.